In the previous class, this was covered. Affirmative, say yes or no, anything. So what were we concerned about in the previous class? We were concerned about describing a data set. Correct? That is why whatever we were doing is what's called descriptive statistics. What were the things which we were covering? We were doing frequency distributions. We did diagrams. And after that, we discussed about measures of central tendency. And measures of dispersion. This much was covered. Now jumping in the measures of central tendency, what did we have? We had the mean, the median, and the mode. What were these? Mean is the magnitudinal center. Median is the positional center. And the mode is the most probable value, most frequent value, whatever you call it. Correct? Now, the mean was given like this. Or in short, we can write it like this also. Correct? So here, we need to add the values and then divide by n. So the mean is exclusively found out for quantitative data. Correct? We cannot just add two blood groups and divide that by 2. This thing makes no sense. Correct? These things makes no sense. So this will only be applicable for quantitative data. let there be n observations. So if n is odd, the median will be, what will the median be? And if the n is even, then the median will be the average of correct. Everyone knows this much. So, say I have 5 people. I ask them their blood groups. And I write them. Can we arrange them in ascending order? We cannot arrange them in ascending order, right? But say I ask them their educational qualifications. 5 people. One guy says he has passed class 10 only. 2 guys says class 12. One guy says he is graduate. Another guy says he has done higher education. Correct? Here this is a sense of ordering. So this is ordinal data. Can we find the middlemost value? So in median is usually found out for quantitative data only. But in certain cases we can find that for ordinal data as well. What implies? Understood? Yes, there are some ways for figuring out a median for the for a frequency distribution also. I'll teach you that later. First, let me finish what I'm trying to say. And then there comes the mode. Value with the highest frequency. Correct? Say again ask those 5 people their educational qualifications. This thing has the highest frequency. So this is the modal value as well. This is the mode. Now, there is a sense of ordering out here. Let me take a data which has no ordering, as a nominal data. Blood groups. Again, we can find a mode out here. Frequency is equal to 2. So, mode can be found out for anything. But only when there is a case of frequency, we can find the mode. If there is no frequency, we cannot find the mode. Now, talking about measures of dispersion. What measures do we have? What is dispersion? I explained here in the last class with this example. Remember this example? I think you should. All three cases, mean is 6, median is 6, but the data are different. Why? Because these differences are different for all the cases. So we need to devise ways of finding or quantifying these differences. So let's see what we can do. We can measure the range. What is the range? It is the spread, how much the data is spreading. It is the highest value minus the lowest value. Correct? So what was the range for the first one? 2 and 10. Let's subtract 2 from 10 and we get 8. For the second one, it was 10 minus 2 is same 8. And the third one, it was 11 minus 1, which is 10. Ranges are fine. Now let's talk about the real differences. See, if I subtract each value from their means, this should yield a measure of dispersion. Do the sum, it will be 0. So why? Because mean is the positional, say, magnitudinal center, and so the amount of values less than it will be the same as the amount of values above it, not the number, amount. So what can we do? We can either put a modulus to nullify the negative signs, and we get 2 plus 4 plus 0 plus 4 plus 2, 10. Quite a measure of dispersion. And else, what else we can do? We can put a square sign. चलो माइनस गुलो चले जाबे. What will appear here? 16 plus 4 plus 0 plus 4 plus 16, 40. So both are measuring dispersions out here. So one can be named as, formulated as modulus xi minus x bar. What is this? And we can divide that by the number of observations also. So what is this basically? Mean. This is the absolute value. Modulus is the absolute value. Mean, absolute, deviation, about mean, had we put the median out here, we would have got the deviation about median. We can do that about any measure of central tendency or any value in fact. And if we had put in the square out here, then what would it have been? Mean, square, deviation, about mean. We don't write this much. We have a short name for this. We call that variance. Heard the name variance? There are shorthand formulas for variance also, which I will tell later. But let me finish what I am doing here. Here the unit will be, say we were measuring, what do you call that? Height of 5 patients. We have 5 heights in centimeters. So whenever we make a square of this, the unit will be centimeter square. Correct? Centimeter square usually means depicts area. We have nothing to do with area out here. Correct? So we cannot afford this square. So what can we do? We can just put a square root above it. Correct? Call that root mean square deviation about mean, which has a short name also, which is called standard deviation. Correct? Achha, there should be a 1 by n also here. Sorry. So this is a frequency graph, a frequency curve, and this is the middlemost value, the median. Then how much is the shaded area? 50% of the total area. The shaded area will be 50% of the total area. So we can find points here. I'll use a different chalk, which may roughly translate to here 25% of the area out here and leaving 75% this side. Correct? We can have another one out here, leaving 25% this side and 75% this way. These are called quartiles. This is the first quartile, this is the third quartile, and obviously the median itself is the second quartile. So these are also positional measures, measures the position of a data set. And now, if we subtract and, matlab we take this area distance, and then we take this distance, and take an average. This will give a measure of how much the data is spread. Opening the brackets, we get this. This whole thing is called quartile deviation. And this much part is called interquartile range. Understood? There is another type of measure of dispersion called relative measures of dispersion. The measures are formed in the format of a measure of dispersion as a numerator and a measure of central tendency as a denominator. One such example is coefficient of variation. Now, this is the general structure of relative measures of dispersion. What is the formula? Standard deviation divided by the mean. That's the coefficient of variation. If the value is very small, you can like multiply that by 100 and give a percentage sign after that. Understood? Why did we do this? We had measures of dispersion. Why did we need this? Because whenever we are doing anything, whenever we are measuring in dispersion, we are involving units. Correct? So we cannot compare these two. To compare, we need to get rid of the units. Then only two data sets can be comparable. Understood this much? Now that much descriptive statistics we had. Let's dive a little deeper in the formulas. We all of us know the formula. I just wrote it a few minutes back. Now, the only thing we need to know about mean is, say we have intervals like A to B, B to C, C to D and so on, and we have frequencies and so on. So how will we find out the mean? You can just take the average of these two. And treat them as the values, correct? So like we don't know what each F1 people got in this group. So we just say that all of them got A plus B by 2 and then treat them accordingly. So that's how we find the mean. Mean is no issue. What will we do if we had to find the median in this case? For that we need a cumulative frequency. Less than type. What is the cumulative frequency less than type? Just keep on adding each frequency to the previous one and keep on extending. So what does this value signify? There are F1 and F1 plus F2 people who are less than C, correct? F1 plus F2 people who are less than C. Say there are total n people. So how many people should be below the median? N by 2. How many people should be below the median? N by 2. If there is a total of n people, how many people should be below the median? At least less than n by 2. At most it can be n by 2, correct? So whenever the cumulative frequency crosses n by 2, for whichever interval, say this one is greater than n by 2, just greater than n by 2, and this one is less than n by 2. Okay? So the median should be hidden in this class. Because it is just increasing and this is the first value which has crossed n by 2. Okay, so the median should be here, that value is corresponding to the value below which there are n by 2 people, correct? So median is in the class. So you have to just find out the median class. After that, there is a big formula, just mug it up. Don't even need to mug it up. I don't think problems like this come, but still, I think you guys should know. This is the formula for median based on group data. Understood? এবার কোনগুলো কি সেটা বলে দিচ্ছি। L naught lower class boundary of median class, here what is the lower class boundary of median class? C, correct? N by 2, what to say out here? FP, cumulative frequency of previous class. FME, frequency of median class. C, class width. Just mark this formula up. Now let's talk about the mode. For group data, the mode is given by this formula. So, and how do we find out the modal class? The class with the highest frequency is the modal class. Correct? Mode, highest frequency. So, the classes are given like this. Say the F2 is the highest among the F1, F2 and F3. So, the mode must be somewhere in this. Correct? For this, L0 stays the same, B. FM is the frequency of the modal class. FP is the frequency of the previous class. And the frequency of the succeeding class. Class width is B minus C, whatever it is. Understood this much? ফর্মুলাটা বোঝা গেছে? জাস্ট এই ফর্মুলাটা দিয়ে মোডটা বের করা হয় এই সমস্ত কেসে। বাট আই ডোন্ট থিঙ্ক পরীক্ষার হলে এই অঙ্ক দেখতে পাওয়া যাবে বলে খুব একটা। আই ডোন্ট থিঙ্ক, এবারে আসতেই পারে, সেই জন্য নো লুজ এন্ডস শুড বি কেপ্ট। Now, I'll talk about two properties. If y is equal to ax plus b, then y bar is equal to ax bar plus b. Y is equal to x plus b, say this is a straight line. Then the mean falls on this straight line as well. It will follow the same relationship. Understood? Part 1. But variance of y is equal to a square into variance of x. There won't be any plus or minus b. Okay. And another thing is also very important in the perspective of your practical exams that will be held on 3rd year. What is the variance of x formula? So this is a shorthand formula which we use for actually calculating the variance. We do not have to take the subtraction every time, we just do the squares and do the sum and then subtract. So this much descriptive statistics we had. Now what next? I am going to give you an idea about what is inferential statistics. Of course, I am not going to teach you the tests today because that will be too much for a single day. Inferential statistics, what is this? Say, we have a population of 1 lakh people. We want to estimate their average height. We want to know this. Can we go up to a 1 lakh people and with a measuring tape and measure the heights? Possible. What can we do? We can draw a sample, much smaller sample. Say we have a sample of 100 people, example. We can find all these what we have discussed till now. Here we can find the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance, whatever we have, we can do it. That's describing the sample. That will be descriptive statistics. Correct? But what will we do with this 100, with the descriptions of the 100 people? How is that relevant to the study? We were interested with the whole population, not with these 100 people only, right? So there we must know how to use these things or make functions out of the sample with the help of which we can go back and draw estimations about the population. This method is called inferential statistics. Understandable? So, there are mainly two types of inferential statistics. One is estimation and another is testing of hypothesis. Here we don't have any prior idea or claim, we just study the sample and draw idea about the population. We had no idea about the population beforehand. This is mostly of two types. One is point estimation, another is interval estimation. Say I want to draw idea about the average height of the population. I study the sample and say the average height is 163 centimeter. I have estimated that to be 163 centimeter. Correct? Here what am I doing? I am coming to a point. So this kind of estimation is called point estimation. Okay? But I had not said that. I said that it lies between 161 to 165 centimeters with 0.95 probability. That is also a statement. But here I am not coming to a single point. I am coming to an interval. This kind of estimation is called interval estimation. And this thing is called a confidence interval. C, this is an interval, and C, it has some point degree of confidence in it. Correct? This kind of estimation is called interval estimation. Obviously, in our syllabus, we don't have point estimation ever. We will have interval estimation, but mostly in our masters. We have some testing of hypothesis in our bachelors. Understood? Now, what is testing of hypothesis? What is estimation? Estimation, we had no prior idea or we didn't make any claim. But for testing of hypothesis, first we are going to make a claim on a hypothesis. About the population. Not just the population, population parameter. Now, what is a parameter? What were we interested about? The height, average height of the population, correct? That is the parameter. Understood? So, if in testing a hypothesis, first we make a claim that say, whatever I feel right, say mu h is equal to 163 centimeter. And then make a statement which completely nullify this. Then we had a population, and from that we brought a sample. We had sample points, sample values. We make a function out of the sample values. A mathematical function out of it. And call that the statistic. Correct? We know the distribution of this statistic, like what kind of distribution does it follow. Okay. So we know the cutoff points above which it has 95% area and below which it has 95% area. Correct? We know the cutoff points above which it has 10% area and below 90% area. Correct? Even we know for 5% level of significance, we can like find out the points which have 2.5% area this side and 97.5% area this side. Again 2.5% area this side and 97.5% area this side. Correct? So we can basically know any positional values of the distribution. The functional value, function of the statistic sample values will yield a number only. Say I have taken a sample of 10 people and x bar is 1 by n summation xi. This is a function only. This will yield a value. If the value, not necessarily will this be the function is very complicated, but yes, if the value of the function fall here or here, we can say the variations are too much. We cannot allow this much variation. If the values fall here or here, whatever, we can say that this much variation is possible. But these are extreme variations, we cannot take this much. So if the values fall here, we say that this is true. But if the values are too extreme and fall here or here, we say this is true. Understood? This is a general method of testing of hypothesis. Now, when you understand, like, get into the various tests, you will understand how these points are figured out, how to compare and all. That will, when you get the classes. And now, there is another thing called p-value. Say a point falls here. And we figure out this area. This area is less than this area, this much area. This area, like this plus this, is less than this big one and plus this big one. So, this area is called, this plus this area is called the p-value. And if our p-value is less than the level of significance which we have set it, like 0.05, which is the level of significance, then we can again say that this thing is wrong and this is right. Correct. So there are two ways of testing a hypothesis. One is the p-value method, one is the test statistic method. This much understood, everyone? This much understood. I didn't get inside the tests. I just told you guys how to reject and how to accept a test statistic. Now say we had 1 lakh people. What should be a good sample size? 99,999. এত বড় স্যাম্পল সাইজটা কি নেওয়া হবে? দুজনের স্যাম্পল সাইজ হবে? কত হবে? ফাংশন আছে, মাথা থেকে বানিয়ে বলা যায়? There are formulas for figuring out sample size. One is the normal method, the Cochrane method. Cochrane, I forgot the name. Wait. The normal sample size formula. What is Z square? The cutoff points corresponding to the normal distribution, which you will know for E is equal to E is the error or the level of significance. For E is equal to 0.05, Z square is usually 1.96. Okay. What is variance of X? The variance of the distribution what we had, correct? Or the values we had. And E square we know the error. So with this we can find out the distribution. So in certain cases we do not have the variance. We get the prevalence rate. In that case we change this formula a little bit. We just write it like this. Okay, this is the formula. And there is another formula. When we know the population size, that is called the Taro-Yamane formula. How is it given? Which was allegedly 1 lakh. You can find out the sample size. This formula is used when in your clinical posting. Had you guys attended the classes, you would have known this formula was used there. So after some calculations, we can find out a desired sample size. If we go beyond that sample size, I get not much accuracy with add, but we will lose much in time, labor, money and all. If we go lesser than that, then we will lose accuracy. Correct? Now, I want a sample of 5 people from a class. Someone gives me the per people, like the students who have scored topped in the previous exam, top 5 people. Their averages will be very high up. Someone gave me 5 people who got the least grades. Their averages will go very low. So what kind of fluctuations is this? This is called sampling fluctuation. And for sampling fluctuations, we allow this much error. Understood? This much area we allowed. Like if the sample, if the test statistic falls here, okay, this is true. If the test statistic falls here, okay, this is true. Okay, but if there is a very extreme case, it falls here, then this cannot be true, then we go for this. Understood? Now errors in testing. And null hypothesis is a vaccine is 70% effective. What will the alternate hypothesis be? It is not. The alternate hypothesis will be a statement that should negate this statement, right? So what will the alternate hypothesis be? Not 70%. But if it is more than 70%, will that be an issue? No. If it is less than 70%, then it's an issue. Correct? Say the vaccine is in reality 70% effective, and I say after doing the test that it is 70% effective. There is no error. We are accepting a true H naught, no problem in that. Say the vaccine is actually less than 70% effective, and after investigation I say that the vaccine happens to be less than 70% effective. There is again no error. Correct? Now, the vaccine is actually 70% effective, but after studying I say that no, the vaccine is less than 70% effective. What is that? An error. Specifically this error, rejecting H naught when it is true. So what's wrong in that error? What will happen? The vaccine is actually 70% effective, but I test and find that it's less than 70%. I'll send that back to the lab for further investigation. Correct? So that won't make much of a difference. So this is one kind of error. Now, the vaccine is actually less than 70% effective. But after doing the test, I find out that no, the vaccine is 70% effective. So that is an error. So what will happen? After testing, I conclude that this is 70% effective. But in reality, it is not. It will go in the market and it will not perform accordingly. So that will be an error. What kind of error is that? Type 2 error. Which one is more dangerous? Type 2. So, we allow some amount of type 1 error in our test. How much? We have a level of significance. That is the upper bound of type 1 error. Understood? That 0.05 or 5% was the upper bound of the type 1 error. We do not allow more than 5% type 1 error. And for type 2 error, which is more grave, what we do? We define the power function like this. Any test which has a good high value of a power function will indicate that in that test the probability of type 2 error is less. So a powerful test will have a very high power function. This much understandable? Now let me give you 3 scenarios. Scenario number 1. Null hypothesis states an average height of one population is not significantly different than the average height of a different population. And the alternate hypothesis states in this case, we will reject the null hypothesis only if the value falls here or here. We do not allow too much extreme high alternate observation or too much low observation. Correct? We just we allow us optimal observation in the middle 95%. We don't allow the extreme 2.5%, right? 2.5% here, 2.5% there. We don't allow this extreme 2.5%. So this is a case of two-tailed test. Now let's create another null hypothesis which states that a vaccine is 70% effective. And the alternate hypothesis states it is less than 70%. In this case, we don't really need to figure out two cutoff points because an extreme value will not be very harmful, a low value will be. So that we just take the 5% area and put it on one side. And rather than dividing on it by 2.5 and 2.5% and putting on either sides, we take a full 5% area and put it on one side. This type of test is called a one-tailed test. Understood? এটা যদি greater than হতো তখন আমরা এই পাশে 5% এরিয়াটা বের করতাম। Understood? These are the different type of tests we have. Now in our syllabus, or rather not, we shouldn't say syllabus, in a scope rather, we have chi-square test, z-test, t-test. In z-test we have, what do we have? One sample, two sample and two sample proportion. And t-test we have the same thing, one sample, two sample. In this we have paired and unpaired. তো এইগুলো আমাদের সিলেবাসে আছে। এবার এই টেস্টগুলো কি সেটা টেস্টিং এর ক্লাসে না পড়ালে এখন পড়লে কিছু মনেও থাকবে না, পরে কিছু হবেও না। তো থাক এতটা। মূল বক্তব্য যারা টেস্টিং এর আমরা কি করছি, টেস্টিং এর ইয়েটা খালি প্রসিডিওরটা জেনে রাখা উচিত। টেস্টিং এর ইন জেনারেল প্রসিডিওর কি করছিলাম আমরা, জাস্ট রিক্যাপ করে দিচ্ছি। বড় পপুলেশন, from a population we draw a sample, we have the sample points, a sample values, we draw a function out of it and call that test statistic or test statistic, whatever you want to call it. And from that test statistic, which is different from various tests, it is different for various tests. We know the distribution of the test statistic and because we know the distribution, we know the critical values, cutoff points, we compare the value of this with this, and then we draw our conclusions about the hypothesis which we have claimed. Correct? This is our general method of testing of hypothesis.